15. Searching the hay. The middle of December brought a spate of holiday parties. RG held his annual staff party in a small bowling alley we took over for the occasion. I brought Aaron, stuffed myself with chicken wings and beer, and bowled 3 strikes and 8 gutter balls. Consistency had never been a hallmark of my game. The Garys were in good form and fun to hang out with, though certainly distracted by their twins, who were busily exploring anything that had been left unattended at floor level. This turned out to include a lot of purses. Jenny, Gary, and I were in mid-conversation when we noticed Jeffrey painting himself black with a mascara wand. This caused me to start humming the Rolling Stones song, Paint It Black, while Jenny rushed over to tend to the situation. "Oh, Lord, thank goodness that's my mascara," she exclaimed as she tried to wrestle her makeup kit away from her son. I joined the cleanup effort and found myself impressed with what Jeffrey had managed to accomplish in such a short period of time. His stomach area design struck me as particularly inspired. I complimented Jenny on his artistic prowess. "You sound just like Robert," she replied with a laugh. "Who does?" I heard RG say from above us. He and Aaron had apparently just walked over. "Sammy thinks Jeffrey might be an artistic genius," Jenny informed him. RG beamed. "Oh, she's just sucking up," Aaron teased. I glared at him, but RG just chuckled. "You must not know Sammy too well yet," he said to Aaron. "No, sir, I was only kidding," Aaron replied. I was surprised to see what looked like a hardening of the little line between RG's right eye and ear, the telltale sign of annoyance. Oh no, was he not liking Aaron? I'd initially been nervous for the two of them to meet, particularly considering Aaron's loathsome job, but I'd reminded myself that RG had a kind and encouraging way of giving people the benefit of the doubt. So if RG was irritated, chances were that it was because he just didn't like Aaron as a person. But maybe I was imagining it. Or maybe RG was annoyed because Jack had just pulled down his diaper and peed into a bowling ball. "Jackson, Wade, Gary, what do you think you're doing?" he bellowed. Jack glanced up, looking like he knew he'd done something very wrong. RG took him over to the corner for a private talk. Jenny turned back towards us with a shrug. "It's always something," she said cheerfully. "Now, how long have you two been together?" she asked. I turned to Aaron, interested in his response, as well as vaguely worried about the bowling ball that had been left unattended, full of toddler piss. Aaron smiled at me. "Not long enough," he replied. That would do for an answer. Jenny seemed to think so too. "Oh, that's very sweet," she said. "Oops, Jeffrey's throwing up candy cane, excuse me." "That was very sweet," I remarked after Jenny had hurried off. "Well, it's true," Aaron said, as he leaned down to give me a respectable kiss. He smelled like beer-flavored shaving cream. The next night was Brayman's staff party, held at his well-appointed Georgetown townhouse. I'd reluctantly agreed to accompany Aaron, after being assured that I'd be shielded from Natalie, and we wouldn't have to stay long. He seemed to understand that my attendance was an enormously charitable concession on my part, and was appropriately appreciative. When we walked in, the first thing I noticed was the ridiculously oversized tree. Either it had been professionally decorated, or the Brayman family was scarily precise. Near the tree was a large menorah. Near the menorah was a kinara decorated with the colors of Kwanzaa. And near the kinara, to top off the politically correct display, there was a large, happy, I don't know how to say this word, EID, centerpiece to make any Muslims feel at ease. As a half Hindu, half Buddhist, I find this home exclusionary, I said to Aaron as we walked through the grand hallway. Easy, he pleaded. All right, I'm just kidding. I suppose it's nice of them to make such an effort, I said, as I took his hand and resolved to make my own effort to be nice and supportive. Though I despise Brayman and practically everyone who worked for him, I could be played for Aaron's sake. Hopefully it wouldn't be too much of a strain. It is nice, Aaron replied. It's not greasy chicken wings and screaming toddlers, but it'll do. Excuse me? I dropped Aaron's hand. Did he honestly think that being snobby about RG's party was a wise move? He could go ahead and kiss nice and supportive goodbye. I was about to launch into a list of all the ways RG's party had been more fun and comfortable than the stuffy nightmare we were walking into. But Aaron had started talking to a colleague who'd come in behind us. Fine. He'd be set straight later. He could run, but he couldn't hide. I glared at him, took a scone from a passing tray, and surveyed the scene in front of me. Brayman and his wife were working the room, which was tastefully decorated with expensive-looking furniture. I sensed Aaron gearing up to include me in his conversation, so I ducked down quickly to pet a passing Cocker Spaniel whose ears were impossibly long and silky. I wondered if it was difficult to hear with them flopped over that way. And were those cataracts? This poor dog might be deaf and blind. I petted her sympathetically and turned over her tag to read her name. It was Andromeda. It's a very fancy name you've got, I whispered. Andromeda responded by wolfing down the scone I was holding in my hand before I had a chance to stop her. For a disabled pooch, she was quick on the gobble. Oh, goodness, please don't feed the dog, dear, I heard a voice above me order. I looked up at the scolding, curled eyelashes of Pamela Brayman. Laden with mascara, they overwhelmed her flinty eyes. Sorry, I didn't plan on feeding her. She took it right out of my hand, I explained as I stood up. Mrs. Brayman smiled like she didn't believe me. Andromeda. Has a bit of a weight problem. We just can't have guests feeding her, she said crisply. But it wasn't. She had already moved on to give some instructions to a passing caterer. I walked to the window and stared out at the yard, pretending to admire the lights that were strung through the trees in the Brayman's yard. Please, don't make me have to talk to anyone else. Please let us go soon. I silently begged the god of painful holiday parties. I wondered if I could just slip away unnoticed. I heard Pamela Brayman's voice ring out. Aaron, sweetheart, how are you? She gushed. Hello, Mrs. Brayman. You look lovely, he replied. I glanced over to see Aaron, Mrs. Brayman, and the evil Natalie chatting nearby. Ugh, how could he stand talking to them? Just the sight of Natalie irritated me. Several other unnamed source quotes had popped up since the passage of the bill. They had all been critical of RG and his staff while exaggerating the role of Brayman and his. But having initially taken Natalie to task for her vile behavior, Aaron was evidently back on civil terms with her. I certainly didn't approve. He caught my eye just as Mrs. Brayman was admiring Natalie's dress and made a convincing "help me, I'm trapped" expression. I didn't smile. Now, is there any chance of you two getting back together? Mrs. Brayman asked Natalie in a loud and encouraging tone. You two were just the cutest couple, she continued, resting her hand on Aaron's shoulder. He was still looking at me. I couldn't be sure what my face was doing, but I watched a flash of panic cross over his. He turned to look at Mrs. Brayman. I'd really like you to meet my girlfriend, Mrs. Brayman, he said a bit forcefully. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize she was coming. John said... She's right over here, Aaron said, cutting her off a bit recklessly. Mrs. Brayman looked taken aback as she was turned to face me. Oh, hello, she said, extending her hand with a surprised look. We haven't properly met. No, we hadn't, but I didn't feel that was my fault. As I was shaking Mrs. Brayman's hands, Senator Brayman joined us. Senator and Mrs. Brayman, this is Samantha Joyce. Sammy, this is Senator and Mrs. Brayman, Aaron said with the slightest frantic edge to his voice. Another time I would have paid much closer attention to these introductions, but I was distracted. Aaron and Natalie had dated? For how long? And how long ago? Why hadn't this been disclosed? Your name sounds very familiar, Senator Brayman was saying to me. Right, from the soft porn email I sent you a few months ago, I replied in my head. Why did Aaron have to say my last name? Why did he have to have dated Natalie? She was one of the worst people I'd ever met. I work for Senator Gary, I answered. I did a lot of work on the prescription drug benefit bill. The one you corrupted and then stole all the credit for, I added silently. Oh, splendid, Brayman rejoined in a tone that indicated that wasn't at all where he remembered knowing me from. Well, I hope you're enjoying our little get-together. Thanks for having me, I replied in a somewhat strangled voice. Natalie wisely excused herself as soon as the Braymans moved on. Aaron turned towards me looking apologetic. I'm sorry she had to bring that up. It was a long time ago and it's not an issue at all, he assured me. Are you okay? I took a deep breath. We were in public, I reminded myself, which was no place to cause a scene. Spearman had convinced me of that. Yeah, I'm okay, I said carefully. I'm not sure why you neglected to tell me that you dated one of my arch enemies, but let's just forget about it for now. Okay, great, Aaron said, relieved. Why didn't you tell me? I asked immediately. Don't you think that's something I should have been told? You dated Natalie, of all people? I can't believe it. Did you sleep with her? I asked. Come on, Sammy. So that was a yes. Oh, gosh. She was probably the office conquest we'd fought about months ago. I felt sick. How did that whole thing last? How long did that whole thing last? I asked tightly. It was just like 4 or 5 months. It was nothing, he answered. You and I have been dating for 5 months, Aaron. Right, he said, scrambling. And what we have is something really different and special. I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you, he continued, as he took my hand. Wow, your hand is cold. You and Natalie must have made quite a couple. Pamela Brayman was clearly disappointed by your breakup, I noted, withdrawing my hand from his grasp. Yeah, well, I wasn't, and I'm the one who counts. You're dating me. You're not dating Pamela Brayman, he replied. That's just because John Brayman got to her first, I said. I hadn't really been in the mood to make a joke. It had just slipped out. Aaron laughed, but my expression warned him not to assume that things were completely fine. In my opinion, he'd really screwed up by not letting me know about his history with Natalie. He should have filled me in, if only to avoid the sort of awkward situation that had just transpired. But I understood that guys often took a different view of such issues, and I really didn't want to waste time being jealous and mad when we were out at a party together. Even if it was a miserable party, it was important to keep up appearances, and I was determined to come off as secure and confident, even if that required a bit of acting. In the cab ride home, Aaron laced his fingers through mine. I need you to know that my old relationships mean nothing to me. I never should have dated Natalie. The whole experience was a disaster, and we certainly don't get along now. I wish I'd met you sooner, but I guess I had to make some mistakes before I hit the jackpot. I'm sorry if I made you feel bad. I never want to do that. Believe me, he said. I breathed in deeply before answering. Okay, but can you do me a favor and just tell me things like that from now on? It's hard enough that you work for Brayman. I'd like to avoid any more unpleasant surprises. Don't you trust me? Completely, he answered. He sounded sincere. As we drifted off to sleep that night in his bed, he rolled me over to face him. Sammy, I've got to tell you something, he whispered. Now whom had he dated? Satan? Yeah, I asked apprehensively. It's something I've been meaning to tell you for a while. I just didn't really know how to go about it, he continued. What is it? What's wrong? He'd done some terrible thing. Possibly committed some sort of crime. I just knew it. I shouldn't have been ignoring my tuition all of this time. My mom had been proven a psychic genius with her paperclip prediction. Surely some of that power flowed through my veins. I'm falling in love with you, he said. That was not a terrible thing. Finally, the words I'd been wanting to hear from him, and he wasn't even that drunk. He had really just said it. He couldn't unsay it. Could he? I breathed in slowly. It's been happening for a while, and I've wanted to tell you before now, but it just never felt like the right time. I think you're amazing. I love you. 3.5 months off schedule, but there it was. As he gazed adoringly at me, I felt little channels of joy chase the sleep out of my body. I was fully awake. I love you too, I responded reflexively. You don't have to say that, he answered. But I did, didn't I? I'd only definitely loved someone once before, though I'd had a fair amount of love approximating infatuations. I just didn't feel like any of those, but it didn't feel like that prior love either. So maybe it was a new kind of grown-up love, or a more mature infatuation, I wasn't sure. And now he was kissing me before I could fully sort it out. You're addicted to him, Liza said to me on the phone the next day, after I had recounted the exciting events. Excuse me? You're addicted? It's an addiction? He's like a drug to you, she emphasized. I don't know what you're talking about, I replied. But as soon as I let myself really process her assertion, I agreed with it. I was addicted to him. That was the feeling I'd found so difficult to pinpoint. I know you've never been addicted to anything before, Liza was saying, so it's not something you can understand immediately. Well, what about the jalapeno poppers? I interrupted, and that Professor Longhair song? I don't know why all of a sudden I was determined to prove I had been addicted to things in the past. This song had been a particularly tough one to beat, so catchy. It's just something you might want to think about, Liza said simply. I already was thinking about it. Yeah, I guess I agree with you, I said. That's fast, she replied in surprise. Well, it sort of makes sense to me. He makes me act in crazy ways, sometimes where I'm kind of watching myself from above, not really believing that I'm doing a particular thing, but unable to stop myself, I said, thinking of the voicemail password incident. Like what? Liza asked. I hesitated. Are you drinking a martini right now? I had anticipated telling Liza about my Thanksgiving low point, but I had also envisioned martinis being involved when it happened. I could be. It's almost lunchtime, she answered. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from her at the bottom line, martinis in tow, with a taco plate on the way. She looked a little tired, but ready to help as always. So, are addictions always bad for you? I mean, is it bad that I'm addicted to Aaron? I asked her. There did seem to be an inescapable negative connotation surrounding the concept of addiction. But what if someone was addicted to doing good deeds? That couldn't be a bad thing, could it? Addictions are generally bad for you, yeah, Liza answered. Drats. I mean, if you want to be in control of yourself, she continued. But forget about the addiction angle for a second. The real issue is Aaron bad for you? She waited expectantly for me to answer. I tried to organize my thoughts. I don't think so, I said uncertainly. I mean, there are things about him that piss me off. Things I'd definitely love to change. I obviously hate that he works for Raymond, which causes a ton of tension, so that's a problem that doesn't seem to be going away, but he's wonderful in other ways. I'm crazily attracted to him, and he is smart and considerate, and he's considerate? Liza interrupted skeptically. Well, he loves me. That's pretty considerate. I wasn't entirely comfortable with this new trend of Liza asking tough questions about my boyfriends, but she'd finally broken up with Ryan, so I couldn't redirect the conversation. I don't mean to argue with you, Liza continued. I just want to make sure you're happy. I know, and it's true that Aaron has some serious flaws, but you know what? I do too. If he can deal with mine, I should be able to deal with his. That's the definition of compromise, right? And when it comes down to it, he makes my life feel more exciting. So I guess I can't really imagine giving him up, I said. Liza looked at me for a moment and nodded. So for now you're comfortable being addicted to him, but you did say that you're not sure you're in love with him, she reminded me. True, and I wasn't sure. Why wasn't I sure? Maybe I'm still falling in love with him? Are you asking me? Liza replied. No, that must be it. I must be still falling in love with him. Meanwhile, I'm completely addicted to him. Liza pointed to her empty martini glass. I'm ready to be scandalized by your behavior, she said. Oh, right. I finished my own drink and told her an abridged version of the trying to guess the right password night. She nodded throughout. Perfectly acceptable behavior, she said when I finished. That was one of the things I loved about Liza. She could be incredibly validating when I most needed it. You don't think I'm becoming psycho? I asked. She shook her head vehemently. No, he made you suspicious. He inconsiderately didn't act like a loving boyfriend when you all were apart. Therefore, he must face the consequences. She sounded like she was handing down a verdict. I felt definitively supported and strong enough to return to the rest of my day, even if I was still uncertain about my exact feelings for Erin. I thanked Liza and promised to call her later. Back at the office soon after, I was getting off the phone with a woman in Akron, who wanted to know if her pets qualified for the new Medicare discounts, when I happened to glance at the date. Not only was it the 20-year anniversary of the day my parents bought me my Cabbage Patch doll, parentheses, Annabeth Sue, my first adopted possession, close parentheses, but it was also 4 days until I flew home for Christmas, which meant I had less than 4 days to get all my presents. The shock registered in a rush. After every panicked, manic Christmas, I always vowed to start collecting my presents slowly over the course of the year, so as to avoid ever experiencing such pain again. And I never ever followed through. It was usually about a week before Christmas that I started trying to quickly learn a hobby that I could parlay into original gifts. Last year, it had been wood burning. The year before, crochet. Predictably, I was never able to attain the level of mastery needed to be able to produce gifts worth giving, but that didn't stop the attempts. As I sat there staring at the calendar, I wondered how difficult it would be to find a pottery workshop that I could attend in the next few days. After a few mildly harassing phone calls to various local art stores, I abandoned the pottery workshop plan. But I did manage to make some passably tasty gingerbread people that night at home, which I considered a massive accomplishment. I gave them out to friends and colleagues on my last day in the office. I even gave one to Ralph in the spirit of holiday forgiveness. He seemed very touched and ate the whole thing in one bite. Just before I flew home, I remembered that I was about to willingly enter an information vortex without access to my BlackBerry, cell phone, or most distressing, the internet. What was I going to miss? I spent an hour reading the note and the hotline to saturate myself with campaign updates while I still had the luxury of doing so. Spearham's spectacular self-destruction had considerably shaken up the dynamics of the field, and the repercussions seemed to still be sorting themselves out. Upon her withdrawal from the race, all of her fellow candidates had issued statements of praise and support, while immediately engaging in a mad scramble for her senior staff and core followers. Her campaign manager had signed on with the Raymond team, her communications director had joined the Rexford ranks, and her hotshot political consultant had hooked up with Y. However, Spearham's major fundraisers, along with her volunteer staff and broad network of supporters, seemed to be playing coy for the moment, at least according to the update. I imagine that rather than intentionally playing coy, they were more likely still in shock from the recent events. Were more surprises around the corner? The first caucuses and primaries were just a month away. I resolved to check CNN on a regular basis while I was home to keep up as best I could. For a moment I envied Aaron, whose family was coming to D.C. to visit him, and only for 3 days. How did other people manage such arrangements? I needed some tutorials. As soon as these thoughts passed through my mind, I felt guilty about them. I was excited to see my parents, and it made me happy that they always insisted I come home, even when it wasn't convenient. I enjoyed feeling wanted. As a special Christmas treat, Aaron rode with me all the way to the airport. I promised to keep in better touch this time, he said, as we lingered by the security post. I bought a backup charger to be sure. You know, I have to head up to New Hampshire between Christmas and New Year's, right? Yes, I did. I'd started getting copies of Bremen's schedules to better prepare for Aaron's absences. I nodded. Good luck, I said sweetly. To you, not to Bremen. I hope Bremen has terrible luck. Aaron took my hostility in stride. Feisty as ever, he smiled. "I'll see you on New Year's, babe," he said, before kissing me one last time. I kissed him back, thinking about how he'd never called me darling again after that one time. I had made such a huge deal over it. From then on, he'd stuck firmly to baby or babe. Oh well, we'd made strides in other areas. I love you, Sammy, he said with his face very close to mine. I'm addicted to you, I answered. I could tell by his expression that he thought this was a very romantic and good thing to say, so it all worked out. I didn't have to lie. He didn't have to feel bad, and as soon as we parted and I found myself alone at the gate, I felt the tug of that addiction. Had I ever missed anyone so quickly? I needed to distract myself. While browsing the table of contents of the New Yorker's winter fiction issue at a newsstand, I spotted the name of a man I'd had classes with in college. I remembered that he'd been a literature major, come to think of it. His story was titled Paper-Bag Ladies, and it looked to be his debut piece. I was intrigued, and though I'd cleaned out my wallet in the pursuit of presents for my parents, I was pretty sure I had a couple of bills left. At the cash register, I was 75 cents short. Gosh, I'm sorry, I don't seem to have it, I told the scowling woman, after scrounging through my bag in the hopes of discovering loose change. I could feel the impatience of the line that had formed behind me. I really didn't want to turn to face them, but I also thought that I could possibly have the change in the little secret pocket whose existence I had just remembered. "Ooh, wait a minute, one more pocket," I smiled at her. "They put these little camouflaged ones in here sometimes, you know." Once I thought I lost my key, and I found it 8 months later in the secret pocket of my bag. It was another bag, not this one. "I've got a plane to catch," a woman said bitterly from the back of the line. "Yeah, I don't have it," I concluded sheepishly. "Here's 75 cents, I heard a familiar voice say, as its rescuing hand deposited the change into the cashier's palm. "Thank goodness," the woman behind me said. I moved out of the line's wrath and turned to face Charlie Lawton, who stood unsmilingly but not unkindly before me. "Happy holidays," he said. "That's a good issue." With that, he started to walk away. "Hey," I said, not sure of what I was going to follow it up with. He turned around. "Thanks," I continued. Maybe it was the holiday spirit. Maybe it was feeling flustered over the great change search, but I didn't feel the requisite surge of disgust towards him. Had I learned to forgive? My Sunday school teacher would be so proud. Charlie started to say something. "Final boarding call for United Flight 273 to Boston." A manicured voice interrupted him over the loudspeaker. "That's me," he said. "I gotta run. See you." "See you," I replied as he walked quickly away. As I waited for the plane to pull back from the gate and wished I wasn't sitting in a middle seat, I pondered my new reaction to Charlie Lawton. If I really thought about it, I still hated him, but somehow that hatred seemed like a distant, remembered feeling. Maybe I'd just seen so many worse things happen to people in the interceding months, or maybe I felt content enough with my life that his treachery didn't damage me as much, or maybe it just took a New Yorker winter fiction issue to buy my forgiveness. I wasn't sure. Before I could puzzle further through the mystery, my BlackBerry buzzed with a message. I checked it surreptitiously, as I was supposed to have turned off all my electronic devices. To Samantha Joyce, SR Joyce at gary.senate.gov. From Aaron Driver, AI Driver at bremen.senate.gov. Subject, best date ever. Text, was with you coming up on a half year ago. Just made it back to my place and found a strand of your hair on my pillow. I miss you and love you, and I hope you have a safe and fun flight. Yours, A. I started typing a reply to this unexpectedly sappy and satisfying message, but the flight attendant caught me. Please put that away, ma'am, she scolded. I had a brief flashback to Pamela Bremen. Oh, sorry. Gosh, does it really interfere with the air traffic control signals? I asked with a contrite smile. Yes, she said sharply. Well, all right then. I just have to reply to Aaron later on. I settled in to read some winter fiction. It had been bought at a dear price, restored civility towards Charlie Lawton. I hoped it was worth it. My old classmate, Steve Hippistead, had written a compelling story. I didn't entirely understand it, which only strengthened my hunch that it was impressive literature. I spent the rest of the flight wondering if I could have inadvertently inspired any of his writing. If not this particular piece, then perhaps other samples of his work, perhaps something he had yet to write. Though we hadn't been close, maybe I'd done some little thing that had stuck with him, something that provided grist for his creative process. Come to think of it, I had often carried my lunch in a brown paper bag to lectures. Could I have been the original paper bag lady? I was intrigued by the notion that I might be so anonymously famous. I skimmed through the rest of the issue and ordered a ginger ale from the flight attendant who'd scolded me. She only filled my cup halfway, perhaps as further punishment. I had a direct comparison because the person in the window seat also ordered ginger ale, and her cup was delivered positively brimming with soda. I thought about saying something, but realized that anything confrontational in light of our earlier interaction could possibly be misinterpreted as abusive, which could in turn bring about air rage charges. The risks were too great, so I decided instead to view my cup as half full and drank the ginger ale in a too quick gulp that sent a painful air pocket protesting through my esophagus. The following days played themselves out in a lazy, warm way. There was a lot of hanging out, a little bit of asshole playing, a fair amount of kitty battling. These were the predictable routines that shaped my winter vacation. I talked to Aaron briefly on Christmas morning, but he was wrapped up in family engagements, which wasn't that surprising. He promised to call me later after whispering how much he loved me I told him that I couldn't hear him, but assured him I was kidding when that seemed to stress him out. 3 days later, I called his cell phone after my parents had gone to bed. Before I punched in his digits, I pressed the star button, followed by 67. Dialing 67 blocked the outgoing number, so it would only show up as unknown on another person's caller ID. Liza had turned me on to this trick after I'd confessed to the Thanksgiving debacle, and I'd vowed to use it whenever there was the possibility that I'd need to make multiple obsessive calls to the same number. It was exciting to use technological tools to protect my reputation, though so far Aaron had been fairly good about staying in touch and leaving his cell phone on. "Merry Christmas," a young woman's voice I didn't recognize answered the phone. It was very jarring. Aaron's family had left and he was on a trip with Brayman, so I knew it wasn't his mother or sister, and no one but Aaron had ever answered his phone before. But I knew the kind of people that did answer other people's cell phones. It was probably some overeager New Hampshire staffer. Aaron usually kept his phone on his person, but he'd been known to leave it on a desk in the past. "Oh, hi," I said, trying not to sound too startled. "Is Aaron there?" "He's in the shower. This is Darlene. Is this Jillian? I've been looking forward to meeting you," she said, with an enthusiastic giggle. I felt my heart go cold. It hadn't ever done that before. I'd always assumed that was a figure of speech with no biological basis, but now I knew better. My heart really did feel frigid in my chest, as though my blood had instantly iced. Jillian was the name of Aaron's sister, whom I'd heard a lot about, but had never met. And Darlene? Well, she was someone who was looking forward to meeting Aaron's family, and who was answering Aaron's phone, parentheses, something I'd never presumed to do, close parentheses, while he was apparently showering nearby. "This isn't Jillian," I managed to say, even though I was having a little trouble breathing normally. "Oh," Darlene sounded confused. "Well, can I take a message? We won't be going to sleep for another hour or two, so I'm sure he can call you back." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach, which validated the authenticity of another cliched expression I doubted. I managed to mumble something and hang up the phone, and then I sat on the edge of the bed, attempting to process the information I just received. I tried for a millisecond to imagine a scenario in which the things this strange woman had just told me could fit into a completely harmless reality. Maybe she was a colleague he'd been forced to share a hotel room with to save the campaign money, who just happened to be young and female and giggly. Nope, I couldn't come up with a viable justification. What the hell was going on? All at once, a memory reared up to painfully redeclare itself. Aaron and I were riding in a subway car. He was nuzzling my hair. "Hey, darling, are you awake?" he was asking distractedly. I'd been confused because it had been such an odd and unexpectedly tender thing for him to say. "What did you just call me?" I had asked incredulously. He looked uncertain, I remember that. "Nothing," he'd said lamely. And I'd rushed to stop him from being embarrassed, to assure him that it was fine and great for him to call me darling in that cute drawl of his. Except I realized now that he hadn't been calling me darling at all. He had mistakenly said Darlene. And been thrilled that I'd covered his tracks for him. Anger accompanied the horror and disbelief that coursed through me. Who is Darlene? For that matter, who is Aaron? Obviously not the loving boyfriend I thought he was. He'd been cheating on me? How dare he treat me like this? What did I do now? I picked up the phone to call Aaron back and demand some of these answers. But I stopped myself. I didn't have a plan, and I didn't feel like just being hysterical. I wanted to deal with this, not just scream about it. I needed more information. I took some deep breaths. Who could Darlene possibly be? She had to be someone up in New Hampshire. It would have been virtually impossible for Aaron to have two girlfriends in D.C. Did I trust any of his friends to give me the goods? I thought about his roommate, Mike. Beyond some late-night discussions of his beer can sculptures and love of pausing movies at alarming moments to create stills that he considered a form of artwork, our relationship hadn't progressed very far. Besides, Aaron had mentioned that Mike was out of town visiting the energy vortexes in Sedona. Thinking about their empty apartment made me wish I could search it. Was there any way to remotely access it? Like a message directly from the god of discovering adultery himself? A little voice in my head reminded me of the fact that Aaron had his own home phone line. At first, I didn't understand the significance. The voice waited patiently for me to realize. Of course, I knew what to do. I dialed the number. When it went to voicemail, I pressed the star button, and sure enough, a recorded voice asked me for the password. I tried 5757 per our previous discussion of Aaron's lucky numbers. To my utter amazement and gratitude for the deity, it worked. You have 7 saved messages. The recorded voice told me in its stilted two-tone manner. To listen to your messages, press 1. I pressed 1. Received on September 29th at 10:30 p.m., the recording informed me. Hey, sweetie, it's me. I heard what I now knew to be Darlene's voice saying, just calling to say good night. I've been thinking about you all day. Have you been thinking about me? I can't wait to touch you again next week. Sleep well, sweetie. Bye. If you wish to save this message, press 2 now. To delete it, press 3 now. To listen to other options, press 4 now. I pressed 2 automatically, clutching my stomach, which had just cramped up painfully. September 29th? That was 3 months ago. Next message. Received on October 4th at 7:05 p.m. Hey, baby, it's me. Thanks for the flowers. I just wanted to let you know how much I'm craving you. The others were all along the same lines. All from Darlene, all recorded in the last 3 months, all saved by Aaron for what were apparently sentimental reasons. It was clear from the messages that they had an intense physical relationship and managed to see each other fairly often. The 6th recorded message provided a key to her identity. Received on December 12th at 11 a.m. Hey, honey, you should be getting home around now. We're fueling up the plane and then headed back to Trenton, but I'll see you in a few days. Thanks for fueling me up, by the way. I love you, baby. December 12th was right around when I'd been in New York, the same time Aaron had been at the Iowa barbecue. I got out my copy of Bremen's schedule. Sure enough, on December 12th, month it listed return from Des Moines, Ron, D.C. I checked the other dates that had been mentioned in Darlene's voicemails. They all corresponded to times right after trips Aaron had taken with Brayman. Many of them had been to New Hampshire, but not all of them. However, all of them had been on a chartered plane. Could Darlene be one of the pilots? I had lots of photos of Brayman deplaning that I had cut out from newspapers when they'd also contained Aaron in the background. I'd often blacked out Brayman's face or added devil horns. Now I realized I should have been doing the same to Aaron. I took out my clippings folder. There was Brayman walking next to Aaron down the stairs in Iowa. I could see one of the pilots in the cockpit, but he was definitely a man. Okay, there they were again in another shot. Aaron was farther back this time. I couldn't see the pilot, but Aaron was clearly talking to someone still in the cabin. And there they were from a longer shot. There was a flight attendant behind Aaron on the stairs. There she was again, and again, and again. I looked at her closely. She looked about my age, maybe younger. She wore a short blue miniskirt and fitted jacket. She looked put together and made up. And in 7 of the 15 newspaper photos I had clipped out, she was standing very near to Aaron. I wanted to kill them both. I hadn't even noticed her before. Why should I have? All planes came with pilots and flight attendants. There wasn't any reason for her to stand out. I'd never seen her in person. I'd never contemplated her existence. And she had been sleeping with my boyfriend for at least 3 months, most likely longer. I tormented myself by envisioning what was going on in Aaron's hotel room at that very moment. Would Darlene have even mentioned the phone call before they passionately lunged at each other the second he came out of the bathroom, all freshly showered and ready for action? And if she had, what had she said about it? I'd managed to spit out an "I'll try him in the office next week" before hanging up the phone. I didn't know why I'd said it. The words had just come out of me in a dead, detached monotone. They hadn't been a calculated part of a clever master plan, but I wondered if I could incorporate them into one now. I tried to think strategically for a moment. Aaron didn't know I had called. If Darlene had told him, she would no doubt have characterized it as some unknown from work, citing the evidence of my parting statement. If Aaron had checked his cell phone's call log, which I imagined he would have done, he would have found that the call had come from a blocked number, thanks to my *67 trick. Therefore, he'd have reason to hope that it hadn't been me to whom Darlene had spoken, though he'd undoubtedly recognized the scary possibility that such an interaction could have occurred. I imagine he'd redouble his precautionary efforts from now on. I didn't have a fully formed plan in my head, but it occurred to me that I should buy some time so that I could confront Aaron and exact my revenge in the most satisfying way. The best way to do this would be to call back and act completely fine, and as if it was my first and only call of the evening. Could I pull that off? It would take serious effort. After a few minutes of deep breathing, I felt calm and resolved. I redialed his number, this time without the *67 safeguard, but it didn't even matter because the call went straight to voicemail. Of course, he turned off his phone. I took another deep breath, gave myself a quick pep talk, and waited for the beep. "Hey Aaron, it's Sammy here, just calling to say good night. I hope New Hampshire's going well. Can't wait to see you in a few days. I love you. Bye." My voice had sounded almost normal. I exhaled in relief. The message would assure him that everything between us was fine, that there was no need to have any vague worries that the call Darlene had answered could possibly have been me. I wanted him feeling secure, and then I wanted him to suffer. That part I still needed to plan. Sleep seemed like a laughable option, even though I could sense the tiredness in my body. I made the concession of lying in bed with the lights off, but my mind raced as if it was housed in a fully illuminated upright posture. Did Darlene assume she and Aaron were enjoying an exclusive relationship? There was a good chance that she did, since I certainly had for myself. I wondered what she would think if she discovered he'd been two-timing her with me. What kind of person was she? Would she care? I decided to do some investigating. I sat up, turned the light back on, and re-examined the photo clippings. The name on the chartered plane read Share Air. I resolved to call them in the morning. Somewhat calmed by the simple existence of a plan, I turned off the light again, closed my eyes, and let my emotions come crashing in. I couldn't be sure at what point the sobbing ended and the unconsciousness began. I felt racked and rocked throughout the dismal night.